pleasure to be invited to speak about an exhibition project we did together as colleagues, co-creators, FAVT, Future Africa Visions in Time. To guide you through our visual and audio offering here tonight, I would like to give you one question to think about and to keep in your hand for the next minutes. What is future to you? We spoke a lot about future already, but some of you are new to the audience, so just keep that in mind. What does future actually mean to you? When we, this is Storm Janse van Rensburg, Nadine Siegert and myself, thought about a curatorial idea about how to make visible, experienceable visions of future, we decided that it would be questions more than answers. What we did was to invite artists from all over the world to cooperate with researchers at the institution that served as the take-off point for the project, Bayreuth Academy of Advanced African Studies, an institution with a problematic title embedded in a German university with all its structures. We did insist on a collective exhibition for a number of reasons. First of all, in order to break open the rigid standardization in academia, the procedures of working, of knowing, of discussion, to create together. Also to have multiple senses involved in the reasoning of what future actually is. And fourthly, to question the borders of what is called research and what is called art. And in that curatorial process and practice, which lasted over a year, we created 20 different projects which address the notion of what is actually a vision of future. And how shall I do that? So there were a lot of people involved, and just to honor their work and their presence, I will read all of their names and I will address the people who are here with us as well. So we had on board Achim van Oppen, we had on board Storm Janse van Rensburg, Nadine Siegert, Emeka Adams, Kitso Lynn Lelliott, who's here with us today, Cara Lynch, Peggy Piesche, who's here with us today. Hi, Peggy. Philipp Kotzel, who's joining us later tonight or tomorrow, Lara Sophie Milagro, Paul Di Miller, aka DJ Spooky, Susan Arndt, Ruth Sachs, Annalisa Urbano, Luis Sala, Ute Fendler, Ingrid Lafleur, I'm sure she's in the house. Okay, that was a moment of connection which just passed. Ingrid Lafleur, Ruya Subuji, Luis Patrakim, Gilbert Dichang, Konstantin Katsakioris, Kiluanji Kiahenda, I could ask now, is he here? Tomi Mochorosi, Kupa Kwashim Tata, Simon Rittmeier, whose work Drexia you will see in the exhibition, Kei-san, Sylvia Kiambi, Edmuta Alvalena Kröker, James Muriyuki, Dieter Neubert, Fabio Vanin, Moses Serubiri, Michael Haus, Sam Hopkins, John Kamisha, Florian Stoll, Abdi Osman, Mariam Popal, Ato Malinda, Sibylle Bauriedel, Delio Jasse, Zora Opoku, Susanne Gerhardt. And what we did all together was to creatively think about what is actually future, what is the vision of future. And instead of seeing future as a noun, a clear definition, we distilled 9 modes of futuring out of the process. They reflect the complexity of futures as doings and undoings. They are performing, suspending, waiting, longing, desiring, accelerating, decelerating, intervening, healing and remembering, queering, optimizing and destabilizing. And Emeka Adams, our artist and designer and dear friend who has a pop-up store with his project Gold Coast Trading Company tomorrow the whole day, found a very beautiful visual language for these modes. Generally, we understand exhibitions as processes, which means that there is not one shape that FAVT, this project, has. Currently, FAVT is on show in Johannesburg in South Africa and at the same time in Salvador da Bahia in Brazil. Before that, we showed it in Bayreuth, Germany, and in Nairobi in Kenya. So the exhibition then is reshaped by every stop it takes or it makes. Curators and artists come on board from the very city and give it a relevant twist depending on the topics that are interesting in the context of that very space. In Salvador, the series Revolutionaries I'd Like to Fuck, which is something I also like to speak, by Rai Chandra entered the show, for example. That all sounds super great and exciting. You can test us if it's really that way. You can get the book here in the exhibition on the 3rd floor. We put some in the shop there, and you can also just browse through and have a look. And it is a great process. Some questions, which perhaps are also relevant for our dear colleague exhibition makers here, remain to travel with us. One is, how do we change the modes of knowledge production in historically contested fields, such in our case also African studies? How do we get away from the distinctions of being artist, being researcher, doing art, doing science? We all know that these things are intertwined, but historically and economically they are still treated as something very separate. So how do we engage that? And how do we avoid being naive when it comes to real-life effects of politics of future? And how do we create alternative ways in publishing, in exhibition making, and in the general question of accessibility? So today, what we want to do is to share one piece from the show FAVT, from this opus of 20 shows. When we say we, this means again tonight Kitso Lynn Lelliott, Henriette Gunkel and Nadine Siegert. The work we're going to share with you, or share with you in aspects, is called Alzire of Bayreuth. It engages the lives and times of a young woman from Suriname. Her real name is unknown. There's very little historiographically accepted trace of her life in the town where she died in the 18th century in 1751. And Kitso and I worked together on this project, inviting the story of Alzire to appear in the space where she died in 1751 in Bayreuth. To imagine what, and now it comes to your hand again, what visions of future this woman might have had when she was walking these stones in a cold 2 days Bavarian town. What might she have dreamed of, and so on. And perhaps here the use of collective work is clear, to ignite and to imagine together. I wish you now a great experience in the following about 60 minutes. We're gonna see 3 artworks, which you just, be open for that. And we will have 3 responses to the artworks in the following, you will see. So just bear with us, 60 minutes. I leave the stage now. The thing can start. Thank you.
No end, no middle, no beginning, no start, no stop, no progression, neither backwards nor forwards, only a stream that flows into another stream, an open sea.
So I just wanted to just give a bit of context for the work that we're talking through, I suppose, tonight, this evening. And Alzire of Bayreuth, that Katharina mentioned that we worked on together, is sort of like a moment in this much sort of longer and ongoing thing that I've been preoccupied with for some time. So I'm just going to read a little bit of context for you before I carry on with the pictures. And I will start with a quote that is, I always find it sort of really speaks well in terms of what I'm interested in, what I'm trying to do, what is preoccupying me. So I'll just start as Trin Minha, and she says, you who understand the dehumanization of forced removal, relocation, re-education, redefinition, the humiliation of having to falsify your own reality, your voice, you know, and often cannot say it. You try and keep on trying to unsay it, for if you don't, they will not fail to fill in the blanks on your behalf, and you will be said. So, my work is about navigating the multiple and contesting imaginaries that inform the ways we conceive of selves and others, as these imaginaries are shaped by differing epistemologies. It's about navigating and translation across difference in time and space. At the center of the work is the image of a time-traveling woman who is both ghost and ancestor, a shapeshifter who has seen many different iterations of herself, as she is constantly reconstituted by the contesting times and histories that form her. She's at once an iteration of the ancient Adinkra concept of Sankofa and a time traveler of science fiction, slipping through multiple temporalities. She's looking for a form, a way to be and become. I have made and presented different elements of this project in response to multiple places of significance to the production of an ontological order where race and violence function the way they do. I interrogate the production of the real as it is shaped through contesting epistemologies, their narratives, and the shape these narratives took over the waters of the Atlantic during the formative episode that shaped the modern age. In each iteration of the project is about making visible and contesting the histories that produce lack through a leading humanity, and the process of tracing the links across multiple moments where this ghostly woman interferes with those histories. As the project travels, it augments, picking up fragments and traces of each place it comes into contact with, changing form in response to each place and its histories. She travels across spaces and times. Each time the work takes form in a place, her presence in that moment transforming the space as it transforms her, until she moves on, taking the trace with her to wherever she goes next. It's a gesture to how we individually and collectively, personally and culturally shapeshift as our world shapeshifts around us. As we are constantly becoming in communication and translation with those we inevitably come across in those cross currents of time and space, The work produces and functions at the intersection of temporal and spatial, the place of becoming, imaginatively and in relation. It's a gesture to reclaim the agency to articulate the narratives that make us, through dialogue that is always in flux, so that those narratives might produce a shape we see fit for ourselves. So yeah, I'm sort of in this place of thinking about this shape-shifting woman to try and make space for being in a way that sits more. Okay, I'm not going to try and explain it. I'm going to let the video play rather, and then offer sort of more quotes and reflections of the sort of ideas that have been nearby me as I've been working and making the work. So I'll let it play, and I'll just offer some things as it goes. Any presence, even though it is ignored, of a particular culture, even a silent one, is an active relay in relation. How do we remember the ghostly histories and their traces in our lives and in our ideas when our memories are conspirators, collaborative agents and traitors, when too many important books, in both the literal and metaphoric sense of the term, have been set aside? What does it mean to conceive of oneself as a giver of shape to ghosts? Is this a boat sailing into eternity, towards the edges of a non-world that no ancestor will haunt? Is she to be merely a ghostly presence that haunts the detritus of a colonial enterprise? If we think of the post-colonial subject merely in their spectrality within the hegemonic European discourse, are we not complicit in denying them the full humanity that they possess? Are they a mere body preserved in the aspect of a European master narrative? Or do they bring with them histories and traditions of intellection that make them agents rather than insubstantial presence? Does the post-colonial theorist dare to theorize the post-colonial subject with the resources of her history and the texture of her thought? Were gaps and silences and empty rooms the substance of my history? In their Khan language, knowledge was constituted anew with each retelling, elasticity of silence as important as the authority of sound. They are still part of the chaos monde, the chaos of the world wherein the overlooked, though marginalized, are not passive insubstantiality, as passivity plays no part in relation. Phenomenology, after all, examines meaningful reality as constituted by consciousness, wherein consciousness is understood in its intentional form as always having to be of something. The consciousness that manifests themselves in double consciousness are: one, conscience of how mainstream America sees itself, dominant reality, and two, consciousness of its contradictions, black reality. As I write, precisely because of the haunting that has produced something to be done, those denied paths come into existence, becoming as I write. I'm in the process of writing those histories and narratives that were leaded in collaboration with the ancestors that haunt me, and in doing so, I might become in a form that is not determined for me by histories that relegate me to a space of lack. The decolonial turn is about making visible the invisible and about analyzing the mechanisms that produce such invisibility or distorted visibility in the light of a large stock of ideas that must necessarily include the critical reflections of the invisible people themselves. What is real to me may not be real to you, and what is insubstantial present to another is my great-great-grandmother's spirit come to show me the way home. The things that happened in the past that I'm interested in are not the pasts that are accessible in history books. According to such history books, the histories and narratives that I look for and I'm preoccupied with do not exist. I use the story of Margaret Gardner and Toni Morrison as illustration. Through Morrison, the story of what it would necessitate the killing of one's own child to protect them shares the center of the stage alongside the return of the dead child. She says, I started out wanting to write a story about the clipping about Margaret Gardner stuck in my head. I had to deal with this nurturing instinct that expressed itself in murder. Why one woman killed her child and another was haunted by the event. Morrison, who is haunted by the story of Margaret Gardner, writes a story that history could not articulate, as she writes through imaginative recall informed by the experience of being a black woman in the United States shaped by slavery. The story depends upon every one of us to come into being. It needs us all, needs our remembering, understanding, and creating what we have heard together to keep on coming into being. If the to and fro movement between the written woman and the writing woman is an endless one, then the haunted writing woman's text might open a space for those that haunt her to enact their agency. We, together, enunciate what was deleted from history. The clipping about Margaret Gardner stuck in my head. To participate in a socio-cultural world where ancestors play an active role in the lives of the living. This is the post-colonial theorist's texture of thought, wrought from epistemology, weaning itself from the master's toolset. A ghost that returns and brings with her memories of personal and collective trauma. Memories that are hers and that are not hers, but haunt her all the same. Of things drowned that return with her to force a reckoning. Who are these ancestors? They are the ones who came before me, and whose experiences are inscribed on my body and my experience of the world. The events that happened to them shape the way I might move through the world, and the way the world treats me. I speak to speak them as they are already present within me. I may be haunted, but it is simply living in a present where all their pasts have accumulated to produce the experiences we navigate now. And they all had their own hauntings. I dwell in them, they dwell in me, and we dwell in each other, more guest than owner. My story, no doubt, is me, but it is also, no doubt, older than me. No end, no middle, no beginning, no start, no stop, no progression, neither backwards nor forwards, only a stream that flows into another stream, an open sea.
Three responses. When you lend your body to the ghosts to inhabit, you are out of yourself, beyond yourself. You don't need much to be an invitation for futures past. No fuel, no extension, no electricity, spirit, body, soul. What does that mean, futures past? It says futures do not work in a linear fashion. They are not post-present. Futures are an imagination of how life could be, could have been. Futures are what if performed. Futures are dreams, wishes, fantasies, stop signs. Future is never alone, is never a noun. It is a verb, a doing, an undoing. We are surrounded by the futures lingering in the spaces around us. Here in this red seat, in this black seat in the cinema in Dortmund, someone else said but an hour ago, leaving a perhaps trace of her vision of future. A house, a car, a cat, health, intimacy after 8 p.m., the dance floor, the next degree. What did she wish for? Imagine for herself, imagine herself to be. A world of solidarity, a sharing economy, a non-religious place, a spiritual world, the new iPhone. Kitso's work that so elaborately and magically confuses linearity and sharply addresses issues of power puts many questions on the table. How do I engage the visions of futures of others who, due to the economy of their times and of our times, have not left many tangible traces? People who have been othered by people who would address myself as their same. How do I, citizen, researcher, heir, and benefiter of power relations, respond to the reverberations of stories that have been in the air for over 250 years? How do I listen to them, talk with them, have my colleagues understand them if they don't fit the criteria of historiography possible? When is history possible? Every time there has been a future, I suggest. And this woman who you invite, who invited herself into your presence, Kitso Alzire, this woman stripped bare of her real name, this woman of who not much of a visible trace is left in the place where she died, not more than a reference in a burial script, until you came. Though she, Alzire, had a future in mind for sure. Perhaps not in the sense of a post-present established by and driving colonial time, capitalist time, straight time. She had sound and sight and love and hurt and anger and boredom. Did she hate the place in which she died, a small town in today's Bavaria, in what then emerged and got branded as European Enlightenment? Was there affection between her and someone? When I moved to the place she had been moved to more than 200 years before, I only found traces, a note in a burial script, and a feeling in the air that somebody was here. Does it matter who performs? Does it matter who invites? Is there a limit to the tellability of stories? Is there still power in the question who's speaking? Do you hear the echoes of voices that the small place you live in closed and closes its ears to, pretending to be a singular story of that enlightenment only? Her story, Alzire's story, reverberates in this space. When I moved here, I wondered what was it like for a 20-something from Suriname to live in that cold. I know what missing someone feels like, and she knew for sure. You cannot tell these things. I, as a heir to the system that robbed her of her freedom, I cannot speak. You can invite. What you perform, which stories you allow to enter your mind and your body is not always a matter of choice. It's also at times a matter of calling. It's a matter of decency to work in solidarity. There's a bird you referenced, which looks back to look forward. There's a line in Schiller's Don Carlos where someone says, sagen Sie ihm, dass für die Träume seiner Jugend soll Achtung tragen, wenn ein Mann sein wird. Tell him to be respectful to the dreams of his youth when he has grown a man. We cannot treat our history separately and divided. Kitso wrote in an email, citing an honored writer, you, and she did that before, so it's very nice, you who understand the dehumanization of forced removal, relocation, re-education, redefinition, the humiliation of having to falsify your own reality, your voice, you know, and you often cannot say it. You try and keep on trying to unsay it, for if you don't, they will not fail to fill in the blanks on your behalf, and you will be sad. By performing, we live what is possible, what has been possible. A sharp friend of mine always used to say, heritage is white people caring about rhinos more than about their neighbors. But how do we care? How do we care for a shared history, however sharp its edges? How do we do an aesthetic, critical heritage practice? If we say me too, do we care, or do we neglect difference as a take of space for alternative futures? Your body in performance is the ship departing to a radically different future past. Your body in performance is taking up the dreams of youth walking in another time. You performing her is undoing me, is undoing us. We perform another. We perform what Agamben named as potentiality, not the ability to, but also the ability not to. I will not agree that I not knew. I will not forget to work in the name of connecting the dots, as Jacques Desplechin demanded. I will not do the rhino thing, so I care for rhinos, and I will have the grace to shut up when I have nothing to say anymore.
Thank you, Kitso. It's actually really great to see your work in a proper cinema. I haven't seen it, and it's amazing. I'm struck by the title of your works, from which I would like to develop a couple of ideas, and by doing so I will repeat some of the thoughts that you have put into words more eloquently. So I'm a bit embarrassed to do that, but I will nevertheless go ahead. My story, no doubt, is me, older than me, and I was her and she was me, and those we might become. The titles remind me of what Keguro Macharia wrote for the New Inquiry in a piece called Survival in Audre Lorde, and I quote, "From Lorde I learned that survival towards freedom requires holding on to those who did not survive, to those not surviving, to those who might not survive. Fresh nettle stings and two tender tongues. Still we open our mouths to attempt something." Quote ends. Your work beautifully points to the sense of survival towards freedom by holding on to and making visible the people that are missing, the ghosts that are written out. As you pose the question, what does it mean to conceive of oneself as a giver of shape to ghosts, you enter what Tavia Nyong'o calls the crypt of blackness. Your work evokes the public as a haunted landscape, populated by ghosts, while your body, a body, takes shape, multiplies, and forms an intimate and uncanny encounter with the ghostly figures of the past, a dancing with the shades of those that you discover. Alzire of Bayreuth, Margaret Gardner, through the writings of Toni Morrison. Who you give shape to, and who you shape, and who shape you in the process of becoming. I was her, and she was me, and those we might become. This audiovisual and performative take on shape-shifting offers the viewer an intimate sense of relations across times and spaces, while evoking the presence of those black women who walked before you, As such, your performance seemed to do two things: recognizing the dead who are already always with you, and recognizing the dead you must especially evoke. Being guided by Avery Gordon's call to remember ghostly histories and their traces in our lives, your work provides a response to and works against the marginalization and silencing of Black experiences and histories, and engages with a sense of being in community via Black death and erasure that takes seriously performance art action, the body. Your work provides ways of seeing and recognizing the ancestors who you understand walk among us as we approach or enact the future they might have envisioned. You seem to ask, how will we understand the future in which many of the community will not join us? How will we both enact these present futures they imagined and do the same for those who follow? Thinking about Black futures as a practice that pulls from the past to imagine a future as difference, your work seems to take this haunting as a provocation to explore collectivity and speculation, a collectivity to come, and you already said that. So moving on oneself up to a different world to come by moving simultaneously backwards in time breaks with linear and cyclical time, favoring a back and forth motion and constant temporal crossover instead, an accumulation of time, as you call it. This moving in and out of time differently in the context of Blackness offers us a decolonizing form of time travel that reminds me of Octavia Butler's much acclaimed novel Kindred. And that's a connection that I would really like to explore further in the future. So in Kindred, the first person narrator, Dana, a 20-year-old African-American woman, is abducted onto a journey across time and space, from Adladina near Los Angeles in 1976 back to the time of slavery to Maryland in 1815, before the Civil War, and right onto the Wayland plantation with 38 enslaved people near Aston. Via command from the outside and hence beyond her control, Dana is forced to travel into her own ancestral past. She is abducted by Rufus Wayland, the son of the plantation owner and later slave owner himself, her white, several times great-grandfather, who visualizes Dana in her present every time his life is in danger, from being a child nearly drowning in a river to his mid-20s when he's lying drunk and head down in the mud. Despite the horror that Rufus embodies, Dana is forced to save the slave owner each time, which points to a typical science-fictional time travel trope, that one could influence one's future by intervening in the past. In this case, this awareness that if Dana wouldn't help Rufus, his daughter, Hagar, who was born out of a forced sexual relationship with Alice, so we're talking of rape here, and hence her own great-grandmother would not have been born. The moment Hagar is born in 1831, Dana's options open up and she's able to kill Rufus. In Kindred, Dana's journey through time and space is involuntary. Her time travel is invoked in the year of the United States bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence, and the moment she moves into her annual apartment with her white lover, Kevin. So Kitso, in your work, you also seem to resist a classic science-fictional take on time travel, in which mostly white male subjects as voluntary time travelers decide to conquer time and space, while at the same time sustaining rather than challenging a normative understanding of temporality. So the three commonly referred to dimensions of time, past, present, future. Unlike classic science-fictional narratives such as The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, for example, which, similar to Italian futurists around Marinetti, presents white male fantasy, not only male, but predominantly, I think, in terms of science fiction, fantasy of speed and technology that allows a controlling of the future by erasing the past, and by doing so, reproducing a continued understanding of a linear normative sense of time. The time travel your work enacts is not actualized through some technical device, high-speed something either, but through the body itself that moves between time zones, dimensions. Technology comes into your work through the body. The body becomes implicated, becomes the vessel. So similar to Dana in Kindred, you seem to follow a pull from the past, My story, no doubt, is me, older than me, through the sense of being in community through and by continued vulnerability. By being pulled to places that mark the collective trauma of slavery as the founding moment of modernity, as Kojo Eshun puts it. So Bahia, Accra, and Dakar, and I know Nadine will be talking about this in a second. As such, your work seems to enact what I would call a ontological form of time travel that makes visible the different pulls of the no longer and the not yet. Or as you put it in your talk recently in Bayreuth, and I quote, "I too live in the time of slavery, by which I mean I'm living in the future created by it," quote end.
Yeah, thank you. What I decided to do in my response is bringing together some thoughts on the exhibition and its components, but also relating it to one of these modes of futuring that Katharina was talking about in the beginning. And the mode of futuring I selected for today is the one of healing, remembering. It's 2 words, but 1 mode. And I just would like to share with you a very short definition. So we tried to give short definitions or like filling some meaning for all these modes of futuring. And the one for healing, remembering, would be to take care of past traumas, to allow the future to come, and to be able to imagine future futures. So this is like my lens today, so to say, to look on Kitso's work. And I would also like to relate it to, as Henry already mentioned, not only time travel but space travel, which is also something very visible in Kitso's work. I was able to visit or like following Kitso's footsteps, so to say, spending 2 months in Bahia, in Salvador de Bahia, and just coming back from there, I revisited, so to say, her work, but I was also able to take it with me and show it there in one of the FAVT iterations, which there became FAVT, which became Future Afro-Brazil Visions in Time. And talking to Kitso and knowing and hearing that she was happy to show the work in Bahia, because Bahia was a kind of starting point where she was embarking also to this journey of time traveling and space traveling. And a lot of the works that you've been doing afterwards are also part of this ongoing exhibition iterations. So being in Bahia and seeing the space, seeing the sea, seeing the place where you've been 2 years before was very important for me, and also showing the work there in a space which was built in the same like historical time, like the castle where you've also shot parts of your film in Bayreuth, was very interesting because it collapsed not only times but also spaces. So like showing the work on like textile that is a bit similar than like your dress we've seen here, and then projecting it onto it and seeing you dancing in the castle in Bayreuth, and in the backyard you see the architecture of this house where the Goethe Institute of Salvador de Bahia is housed today, created this layering. And this layering, I think, for me is part of, it's maybe the main, like, or not the main, but one of the most important technologies you are using in your works. Not only technically the layers of images in your videos, but also I would say this layering is actually the methodology that creates the possibility for time travel and space travel, because it brings images together. It creates these palimpsests of images and of like this also stories and times. So I was thinking around like how is healing actually possible, and what kind of healing do you offer in your works? And I found for me today that it is actually this layering that makes perhaps healing possible, because you go back, but you also like create interlayers. You said in the beginning that you're slipping into or in between times, and you create thus the possibility maybe to also rewrite the script. And I was thinking, like, maybe this is the thing that you are able to, with slipping into time and with thus creating interlayers, that you maybe are also like able at certain moments to change something in the past. I was always fascinated by this idea of we all know this cheesy film like Back to the Future, where going back to repair something in the past, to kind of change the script that has already been written, and thus try also maybe to heal something. And for me, this is also something like when you like move in and out of time, when you turn around the linearity of time, maybe you take also the possibility to create a little repair while doing this. And this also reminds me of other works that we have in our exhibition, and I would just like to mention 3 of them that follow similar thoughts maybe, and that we also like related to other modes of futuring. One mode of futuring might be intervening as a form of interfering with the future script and to confuse it, to write it anew. And one of these works was the work called 20,000 Leagues Under Seas, which is of course a reference to Jules Verne's futuristic book by Ruth Sachs, and she was kind of going into the book, and she was on every page of the book. She was rewriting a little bit. She was introducing, intervening with little mistakes. She was rewriting the whole book, not very straightforward, but you couldn't really see it at first sight, but you could see like the little changes when you read it properly. And she was also changing the script and creating graphics that create another visuality of this book. Another work that might also follow this is Ingrid Lafleur's. Did she arrive? Yes. Ingrid Lafleur's The Resonance, where she performatively engaged with a traumatic or traumatizing past of Germany, which is the Herero genocide in Namibia. And she was kind of going into that story and kind of performatively recreating some elements of it, which was like scratching meat from bones, and then with glass fragments, and then creating a teleporter with these bones, but also with hanging skulls on the ceiling of the museum, and creating a teleporter that enables you to go to the future by going back to the past. And the third work I would like to mention here was the project by Peggy Piesche and Cara Lynch called Deposits of Future, who both also speak about the beauty and the terror of Black experience by working in a room which is a safe of a bank, or was a safe of a former bank. Both thinking around the safe space as a safe space, but also the safe as a space that hides history, that locks history aside, and also going into this and rethinking it and revisiting this idea of the safe and the safe space. They were thinking around this, also returning to the constitutive trauma of the transatlantic history that also Kitso is referring to. So these 3 works, I think, are also important here when we want to understand how we were thinking around intervening and healing, remembering as modes of futuring. And just to finish my little response, I would like to say that another aspect I find very important in Kitso's work, and it also is very present in her writing and in her speaking, is the aspect of hauntology. And this is something I like very much, because the Future Africa Visions and Time exhibition and all its works in there, they didn't stop. And somehow, when we showed the work in Bayreuth 2 years ago, afterwards we thought, okay, another exhibition project done. Let's move on to the next one. But it came back through the back door, so to say, and now it wants us to travel with it, and it wants us also to kind of travel with the project and to continue to engage with the project, not stopping and leaving them aside and showing them in the same way all the time again, but still always engage with the artist and think, how can we take this project to next space, and what does this space wants from us, and what does this moment in time wants from us to kind of engage with this project in a special locality. So, and yeah, haunting comes in with Kitso's work very much. So we are also engaged with the idea of, and the concept of hauntology this winter, and thinking about what happens when time is out of joint. Of course, here referring to Derrida's like seminal work, thinking around time as also like something that is connected with joints. Like in German, I like very much the idea of ausgerenkte Zeit, and maybe Kitso's work helps us to think about how should we join this time again, or can we also like stay for a while with the time that is out of joint to kind of evoke a healing process. Maybe so far for today.
Well, thank you for the reflections. I was thinking to say, like from everybody when we were talking, there's something I wanted to say back, but I feel like somehow across the conversation, I suppose, the things that I've thought I wanted to say have kind of come up in some way, like shifting the past, the Sankofa, the sort of this ghost who from the future haunting the past, like we've talked about, has all sort of appeared somewhere. So I'll just say thank you for your reflections. I'm thinking through them. I'm just digesting. So I'll leave that. And should we carry on?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll show you the last piece.
We already said thank you.
At dusk, before the rain, in a deserted corner of the beach, facing the insurmountable amount of water between my island and yours, never again conquered distance. between continents that split long ago, like the round people in Plato. I am as lost as the other half, and as lonely as the string of berimbau.
She had travelled a long distance, holding a memory the waters did not drown. How bad is the scar? A woman walked out of the water, thirsty and breathing hard, having travelled a long distance, looking for a face. Nobody counted on her walking out of the water, but when she did, she reminded them of things that they hadn't forgotten or hadn't even gotten around to remembering yet. How bad is the scar? A woman walked out of the water, thirsty and breathing hard, having travelled a long distance, looking for a face. Nobody counted on her walking out of the water. Nobody counted her until she forced an accounting.
you.